April 15th, 1945. A gray morning in war-torn Germany. Just southwest of Bergen, the British 11th Armored Division rolled into a place that would haunt history forever. Bergen-Belsen. What they found defied human imagination. Thousands upon thousands of emaciated prisoners, the living barely distinguishable from the dead. More than 13,000 unburied corpses lay scattered across the camp, and another 60,000 survivors were clinging to life, hollow-eyed, skeletal, and ravaged by starvation and disease. In the days that followed, even with liberation, death did not stop. Typhus, tuberculosis, and infections swept through what was left of the camp, claiming thousands more lives. To contain the horror, British soldiers rounded up captured Nazi guards, both men and women, forcing them to help bury the dead in enormous mass graves. Among them stood a young woman whose name would soon echo as a symbol of cruelty. Irma Grese. She hadn't always been a monster. Born October 7th, 1923, in the small German village of Rechen, Irma was the third of 5 children, raised by hard-working dairy laborers. Her childhood began like many others, until Adolf Hitler rose to power in 1933 and reshaped the very soul of Germany. Through rallies, radio broadcasts, and films, the Nazi regime saturated daily life with its poisonous ideology. The youth were not spared. Boys were molded into soldiers through the Hitler Youth, while girls were trained in loyalty and discipline through the League of German Girls. But Irma's father, Alfred Grese, detested the Nazis. A devout Christian and strict disciplinarian, he forbade his children from joining such organizations, though his defiance could not shield them from the propaganda flooding their classrooms. Every schoolroom bore Hitler's portrait, every textbook rewritten to glorify the Reich. Children learned not of art or poetry, but of obedience, purity, and hatred. In 1936, tragedy struck the Grese family. Irma's mother took her own life after discovering her husband's affair with a local innkeeper's daughter. Irma, only 13, was left under her father's stern, often violent rule. Her sister Helene later recalled the constant beatings and Irma's struggles in school, the bullying, the loneliness, and finally, her decision to drop out at just 14. She drifted from one menial job to another, on a farm, in a small shop, searching for direction. By 1939, at only 15, she found herself working as a nurse's assistant at Hohenleichen Sanatorium under Dr. Karl Gebhardt, a man who would later gain infamy for the medical atrocities he performed on prisoners. Irma's dream was to become a real nurse, but her poor grades barred her from training. By 1941, she was reassigned to a dairy plant in Furstenberg, unaware that fate was steering her toward darkness. That turn came in July 1942, when she was sent to Ravensbrück, the largest women's concentration camp in Nazi Germany, a place that turned ordinary women into instruments of terror. Ravensbrück was not merely a camp, it was a factory of suffering. More than 130,000 women, Jews, Poles, Russians, Roma, passed through its gates. Over 90,000 never came out. Here, Irma learned the trade of cruelty. The SS ran Ravensbrück with both male and female guards. Around 150 women, most young, most volunteers. For many, it was simply a job that offered food, a uniform, and a sense of power in a collapsing world. But under the notorious overseer Dorothea Binz, new recruits were taught to dominate prisoners, to strip them of hope and identity until only obedience remained. Ravensbrück became, in effect, a school of brutality. Nearly 3,500 women trained there before being sent to other camps across occupied Europe. Within its barbed wires, doctors like Gebhardt, Hertha Oberhauser, and Fritz Fischer conducted savage medical experiments. They shattered women's bones with hammers, sliced open flesh to infect wounds with bacteria, and amputated limbs, all without anesthesia. Around 80 Polish women were chosen as test subjects. Many died. The rest carried their scars for life. They called it research. It was torture. Irma Grese, still a teenager, was reportedly assigned as an assistant nurse during these experiments. a witness to agony so profound it could shatter the human mind. Instead, it hardened hers. By the time she confessed her work to her family, her father beat her and cast her out of his home. She was 18 and already lost. When she next reappeared in history, it would be in Auschwitz. By March 1943, Irma Grese arrived at a place that would forever define her name, Auschwitz-Birkenau, the largest and deadliest of all Nazi concentration camps. What began as a labor and prisoner complex had by then become a vast, efficient engine of death. Electrified fences sliced through the landscape, dividing the camp into 10 sections. Watchtowers loomed over the barbed wire, and smoke from the crematoria hung like a permanent storm cloud above the horizon. Irma was barely 20, yet here she discovered something intoxicating: power without consequence. Her younger sister Helene would later remember her as a timid child who used to avoid arguments, afraid even to speak out of turn. But Auschwitz changed everything. In this world of uniform cruelty, Irma found a perverse sense of control. For the first time, she could inflict pain, and no one could stop her. Soon, she became infamous among prisoners, earning names whispered in terror: the hyena of Auschwitz, the beautiful beast. She was striking to look at, blonde, blue-eyed, often immaculately dressed in a fitted SS uniform. But beneath that beauty hid something broken and monstrous. Rumors spread like wildfire. She was said to have taken lovers among the SS, including Dr. Josef Mengele, the Angel of Death, and Josef Kramer, the camp commandant. Others whispered of her relationships with both male and female inmates. Cruel games of affection and power that always ended the same way, with betrayal and death. Survivors described her as both seductive and terrifying. Dr. Gisela Perl, a Jewish gynecologist who survived Auschwitz, once said Irma was the most beautiful woman I had ever seen, and the most depraved human being imaginable. Another survivor, Olga Lengyel, wrote that Grese delighted in sending the most attractive women to their deaths, jealous of their looks and eager to assert her control. At times, she spared a few. One was Nina Kalska, a 16-year-old girl Irma claimed reminded her of her own sister. Nina became her messenger, a reluctant witness to secret, debauched gatherings in the barracks. But Irma's mercy was fleeting. Once she tired of someone, they were sent to the gas chambers or beaten until unrecognizable. When one Georgian man resisted her advances, Irma exacted her revenge on his girlfriend, torturing her publicly before ordering his execution and sending the woman to the camp brothel. Even her supposed lovers among the SS distanced themselves from her when they learned she had been intimate with Jewish prisoners, considered racially impure by Nazi ideology. Amid this chaos, Irma became romantically involved with an SS officer named Franz Wolfgang Hotzinger, but her promiscuity and repeated abortions left her physically scarred. Dr. Perl, who was forced to perform one of these abortions, recalled that Irma's only fear was that the procedure might hurt. Her rise in Auschwitz was as rapid as it was horrific. She began with telephone duties, but was soon promoted after enduring a disciplinary punishment. Forced to lead work crews building roads and carrying stones for neglecting to wear her SS cap. By May 1944, she had achieved a new position: senior guard of Birkenau's Camp C, overseeing half a dozen female guards and roughly 30,000 prisoners, most of them Hungarian Jews deported that same year. Between May 15th and July 9th, 1944, in just 8 weeks, nearly 424,000 Hungarian Jews were sent to Auschwitz. Most were killed upon arrival. Irma was there, helping with the selections, deciding who would live and who would die. Camp C was a nightmare, even by Auschwitz standards. Each barrack, built for a few hundred people, was crammed with 1,000. The floors were bare, the air thick with disease and despair. Latrines overflowed, and the stench clung to the skin. Irma mocked the suffering, once remarking that prisoners seemed to think any place was good enough for a latrine. Always at her side was her trademark braided leather whip, its handle wrapped in cellophane so it could be easily wiped clean of blood. Survivors said she carried it everywhere, smiling as she struck prisoners for the smallest infractions. A misplaced step, a missing button, a stolen crust of bread. Roll calls, which began before dawn, could last 6 hours. Prisoners stood motionless in the cold, while Irma paced before them, lashing out with her whip or boots at anyone who trembled or fainted. Sometimes she forced women to hold heavy stones above their heads until they collapsed. Other times, she made them kneel for hours in mud and snow. When blankets were torn apart to make shoes or coats, she demanded they be returned. And when no one confessed, she unleashed violent searches, striking anyone she suspected. Her cruelty was so excessive that even Josef Kramer, the commandant, once ordered her to stop using her whip. She ignored him. Irma's brutality reached a point where it seemed almost ritualistic. She treated suffering like theater, each act of violence performed with cold precision. Witnesses swore she smiled at the sight of blood. She also took part in selections, the chilling process where SS officers decided which prisoners were still fit for labor and which would be sent to the gas chambers. Naked women were paraded before them like cattle. Those who resisted were beaten senseless. On one occasion, when 2 women jumped from a window in a desperate attempt to escape, Irma calmly drew her pistol and shot them where they lay. And yet, even within her monstrousness, flickers of something disturbingly human appeared. Alice Tenenbaum, a 14-year-old prisoner, was sent to die 16 times by Dr. Mengele. And each time, Irma pulled her back from the line. Years later, Alice would learn why. She reminded Irma of her little sister, Helene. But any trace of compassion was swallowed by the abyss. Irma rode through the camp on a bicycle, her 2 enormous dogs trotting beside her. She starved them deliberately, unleashing them upon prisoners who stumbled or fell behind during labor marches. One survivor testified that the dogs tore women apart while Irma watched, eyes shining, lips curled in a faint smile. Her favorite outfit, looted from murdered Jews, was a sky blue jacket paired with a dark tie. She often bragged that after the war, she would become a movie star, her name in lights. "I know life," she once said. "My experiences will make me an artist." But her stage would not be Hollywood. It would be the gallows. As the war drew to its violent end in early 1945, the walls of the Third Reich began to crumble. The Red Army was closing in from the east, and Auschwitz, that sprawling empire of death, was ordered to be evacuated. Irma Grese joined the retreat, marching alongside SS guards and thousands of prisoners through snow and freezing winds. These forced marches would later be called death marches, for many never survived them. Anyone who stumbled was shot where they fell. Grese, still just 21, oversaw one such march from Auschwitz to Ravensbrück, and finally to Bergen-Belsen in March 1945, a place already drowning in filth, disease, and despair. By then, the war was all but lost, yet Irma's cruelty showed no sign of ending. Bergen-Belsen was a wasteland. Prisoners received little more than a thin slice of bread and a ladle of watery turnip soup each day. There was no water for washing, barely enough to drink. Overcrowded barracks forced inmates to sleep sitting up, pressed against one another for warmth. Hundreds died every day, from typhus, starvation, and dehydration. Even here, in this final circle of hell, Irma continued her reign of terror. Witnesses said she beat and kicked prisoners until they bled, forced them to kneel for hours holding heavy stones above their heads, or made them march and perform endless squats in the cold rain until they collapsed. Just days before liberation, she was seen smashing the heads of 2 sisters together for stealing potato peelings, and beating another young girl with a riding crop until she lay motionless. In those last weeks, her reputation among prisoners became legend. They called her the Beast of Belsen. On April 15th, 1945, British soldiers of the 11th Armored Division finally reached Bergen-Belsen. What they found stunned even hardened veterans of war. Piles of corpses stretched as far as the eye could see. Survivors moved like ghosts, too weak to stand, too starved to speak. The stench was unbearable. 2 days later, April 17th, the British captured Irma Grese, along with Joseph Kramer, the former commandant of both Auschwitz and Belsen. Even in defeat, she appeared calm, her SS uniform pressed, her hair neatly combed. When a journalist asked her why she had committed such atrocities, she replied coldly, "It was our duty to exterminate antisocial elements so that Germany's future would be secure." Her lack of remorse chilled everyone who heard it. In September 1945, the Belsen trial began, one of the first major war crimes tribunals in modern history. Survivors testified one after another, describing Irma's whippings, shootings, and the savage way she unleashed her dogs. They called her beautiful, but without a soul. Irma remained defiant. She dismissed the testimonies as lies, sneering that her accusers were making an elephant out of a fly. She admitted to beatings, but denied any killings. Her calm arrogance did her no favors. The court saw through the facade. On November 17, 1945, she was found guilty of war crimes and sentenced to death. A month later, on December 13, 1945, she was led to the gallows at Hamelin Prison by Britain's chief executioner, Albert Pierrepoint. At just 22 years old, she was the youngest woman executed under British law in the 20th century. Her final word, uttered as the black hood was drawn over her face, was a single chilling command. Schnell! Quickly, and just like that, the rope snapped, ending the life of one of history's most infamous women. No one wept for her. No one mourned. All that remained was the echo of her crimes, a reminder that even ordinary people, given power without conscience, can become monsters. Thank you for watching Nostalgic World History. Be sure to give this video a like, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button to join us for more powerful stories from the past.